The Galactic Empire sets its gaze on Earth, reaches its explosive climax, as thousands of hidden human fighters emerge from asteroid belt concealment, swarming the Imperial fleet with devastating precision. Their modular ships target the massive Imperial Vanguard cruiser's vulnerabilities, obliterating it in a spectacular display that forces Admiral Kane to order an unprecedented retreat, forever changing the Empire's perception of humanity from primitive subjects to worthy adversaries. The Galactic Empire's flagship, Celestial Dominion, cut through the void of space, its massive silhouette blotting out distant stars as it approached the outer rim of the Sol system. The ship's gleaming hull, adorned with the Imperial crest, reflected the light of the nearby sun, making it appear as if a small moon had suddenly materialized at the edge of the system. Emperor Maximus had ruled the Galactic Empire for nearly a century, expanding its reach across thousands of worlds. The Imperial warships patrolled the northern border of the Sol system, maintaining the peace and projecting the Emperor's power across the stars. On the bridge of the Celestial Dominion, Captain Lyra Taval stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her posture rigid with military discipline. Her sharp features were illuminated by the soft blue glow of the tactical displays that surrounded her, and her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, emphasizing the determination in her eyes. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the distinctive accent of the Imperial core worlds. "All systems nominal, Captain," replied her first officer. "We are maintaining position at the edge of the Sol system, as ordered." Lyra nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. At 42 standard years, she had spent more than half her life in service to the Empire, climbing the ranks through sheer determination and tactical brilliance. Now, as the captain of one of the Empire's most advanced warships, she was finally in a position to fulfill her lifelong dream, discovering and conquering new worlds for the glory of Emperor Maximus. "Any word from Admiral Kane?" she asked, referring to her superior officer who was overseeing the exploration mission from the flagship Imperial mandate. "The Admiral has scheduled a briefing in 30 minutes. Captain," the communications officer reported. "He wishes to discuss the preliminary scans of the uncharted territories beyond the system's edge." A smile tugged at Lyra's lips. Admiral Harren Kane was known for his strategic brilliance and unwavering loyalty to the Empire. Under his guidance, countless star systems had been brought into the Imperial fold, their resources harnessed to fuel the Empire's endless expansion. If Kane had called for a briefing, it meant he had found something of interest. The year was 3247 SC, standard calendar years since the establishment of the Galactic Empire. Earth, a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, lay well outside the boundaries of Imperial space. It wasn't even a footnote on the Empire's vast star charts, but that was about to change. As Lyra prepared for the briefing, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The Empire brought order, technology, and civilization to primitive worlds. Whatever backward species they might encounter in this sector would soon know the glory of serving the greatest power the universe had ever known. Such was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, and the weak submitted. It was a simple truth that had served the Empire well for over 3 millennia. Little did Lyra know that the humans of Earth were far from the primitive beings she imagined them to be, and they had been watching the Empire's approach with great interest. 30 minutes later, Lyra stood in the holographic conference room aboard the Celestial Dominion. The room was dominated by a large, circular table, around which stood the captains of the other ships in the exploration fleet. At the head of the table, the imposing figure of Admiral Harren Kane materialized in a shimmer of blue light, his holographic presence projected from the Imperial mandate. Kane was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a weather-beaten face that spoke of decades spent in the harsh environments of frontier worlds. His silver hair was cropped short in the military style, and the numerous medals on his chest gleamed in the artificial light. "Captains," he began, his deep voice filling the room. "Our long-range scanners have detected something unusual in the uncharted system, designated Sol 12. With a wave of his hand, he conjured a holographic representation of a small solar system, 8 planets orbiting a yellow star. The third planet from the star has shown signs of artificial radio signals," Kane continued, zooming in on a small blue-green world. "Our satellite mapping reveals cities, roads, and infrastructure consistent with a technologically advanced civilization." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the assembled officers. Discovering an advanced civilization was rare. Most species the Empire encountered were still in primitive stages of development. "How advanced are they?" Lyra asked, leaning forward with interest. Kane's expression remained impassive. "Advanced enough to have achieved space travel within their own system, but not interstellar capabilities as far as we can tell. They appear to be confined to their planet and its immediate vicinity." "Primitive, then," one of the other captains scoffed. "Barely worth our attention." "Do not underestimate them," Kane warned, his eyes narrowing. "Our intelligence suggests they possess nuclear capabilities and have developed rudimentary energy weapons. They may be centuries behind us technologically, but they are not helpless." He pressed a button, and a new image appeared. A detailed report on the planet's defenses, compiled by the Empire's Intelligence Division. "As per Imperial Protocol," Kane continued, "we will initiate first contact by presenting them with the standard surrender ceremony. The Empire is willing to negotiate peaceful terms of integration into our dominion, according to our laws." Lyra studied the report with growing interest. The inhabitants of this planet, humans, they called themselves, had developed a surprising variety of weapons and defensive systems for a species that had not yet ventured beyond their own solar system. "And if they refuse to submit?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Kane's expression hardened. "Then we will demonstrate the consequences of defiance. The Emperor has personally commanded that we complete our survey mission and prepare for combat if necessary." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the assembled officers. "Captain Taval, you will lead the advanced scout ships to make first contact." Lyra straightened, pride swelling in her chest. "It will be my honor, Admiral." "Remember, the goal is peaceful integration," Kane added. "But if these humans resist, you are authorized to use appropriate force to bring them to compliance." As the meeting concluded, Lyra couldn't help but feel a thrill of anticipation. First contact with a new species was always an exciting prospect, even if the outcome was virtually predetermined. The Empire had never failed to subjugate a world once it set its sights on it, and this Earth would be no different. Or so she thought. 2 days later, Lyra commanded a small fleet of scout ships as they approached Earth's orbit. The blue planet grew larger in the view screen, its continents and oceans becoming more distinct as they drew closer. "Send the ultimatum," Lyra ordered, her voice calm and authoritative. The communications officer nodded, transmitting the pre-recorded message to the planet below. The message, translated into all major Earth languages by the Empire's advanced AI systems, was simple. Submit to the authority of the Galactic Empire, or face the consequences. What happened next took the Imperial officers completely by surprise. Instead of the fear or awe they expected, the humans responded with a message of their own, one that left Lyra momentarily speechless. "Imperial vessels," came the reply, transmitted on the same frequency they had used. "This is General Helena Frost of the United Earth Defense Force. We've been monitoring your approach for some time. Your ultimatum is noted and rejected. If you're looking for a fight, you've come to the right place. We welcome the challenge." Silence fell over the bridge of Lyra's command ship as the officers exchanged bewildered glances. Never in her career had Lyra encountered such a brazen response to an Imperial ultimatum. "They're eager to fight us?" her first officer asked incredulously. Lyra's eyes narrowed. It seems these humans are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Scan their orbital defenses. Let's see what we're dealing with. Before the scan could be completed. However, the sensors blared a warning. Multiple small craft had launched from the planet's surface and were rapidly approaching the Imperial scout ships. "Fighter squadron incoming," the tactical officer reported. "They appear to be armed with energy weapons." Lyra frowned. The intelligence reports had suggested the humans possessed only rudimentary energy technology. Yet the readings from these fighters indicated something far more advanced. "Launch defensive escorts," she ordered. "Do not engage unless fired upon. Let's see what they're capable of." The Imperial escort fighters deployed, forming a protective screen around the larger scout ships. The human fighters continued their approach, showing no signs of slowing or changing course. "They're locking weapons," the tactical officer warned. "Hold position," Lyra commanded, her voice steady despite the tension building on the bridge. "Let them make the first move." She didn't have to wait long. Without warning, the Earth fighters opened fire, their energy weapons striking several Imperial escorts with surprising precision. The impacts caused more damage than anticipated, disabling 2 escorts immediately. "Return fire!" Lyra ordered, her composure momentarily shaken by the effectiveness of the human weapons. "Disable their fighters if possible, but protect our ships at all costs." The space around Earth's orbit erupted in a brilliant display of energy weapons as the 2 forces engaged. The Imperial escorts, technologically superior in almost every way, should have made short work of the human fighters. But the Earth vessels demonstrated unexpected maneuverability and tactical coordination, evading many of the Imperial shots while landing, hit after hit on the escort ships. After a brief but intense skirmish, the human fighters broke off their attack and retreated toward Earth, leaving behind 3 damaged Imperial escorts and 1 completely disabled. Lyra stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans had withdrawn before the Empire could bring its full might to bear, but they had inflicted far more damage than should have been possible for a species at their technological level. "Damage report," she demanded, her voice tight with restrained anger. 3 escorts reporting significant systems damage, her first officer replied. "1 is completely disabled and will need to be towed back to the fleet. No casualties, but our shields were not as effective against their weapons as they should have been." Lyra's mind raced as she considered the implications. Either the Empire's intelligence on human technology was woefully inadequate, or these humans had somehow acquired advanced weapons technology from another source. "Prepare a full report for Admiral Kane," she ordered. "Include all sensor data on their weapons and fighter capabilities, and maintain our position at a safe distance from their orbital range." As her officers carried out her commands, Lyra replayed the brief battle in her mind. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had struck first, confidently and effectively. They hadn't been intimidated by the Empire's technological superiority. Instead, they had seemed almost excited by the prospect of battle. It was unlike anything she had encountered in her years of service, and it left her with an unsettling thought. What if these humans were more dangerous than the Empire had anticipated? Later that day, Lyra transmitted her findings to Admiral Kane aboard the Imperial Mandate. The Admiral's holographic image flickered as he reviewed the battle data, his expression growing increasingly grave. "Their energy weapon technology is far more advanced than our intelligence suggested," Lyra reported. "And their tactical approach was unusual. They seemed eager to engage us, almost as if they were testing our capabilities rather than attempting to drive us away." Kane's eyes narrowed as he studied the weapon signatures. "These readings don't match any known technology in this sector. How could a species confined to their own solar system develop such weapons?" "I don't know, Admiral," Lyra admitted. "But it's clear we underestimated them. Their fighters outmaneuvered our escorts, and their weapons penetrated our shields more effectively than they should have been able to." A tense silence fell between them as Kane considered the implications. Finally, he spoke, his voice resolute. "Return to the fleet. Captain, I'm calling for reinforcements. The Emperor will not tolerate resistance, especially from a species that has shown such insolence." "What are your orders in the meantime, Admiral?" Lyra asked. "Continue reconnaissance from a safe distance. Do not engage unless provoked, but gather as much intelligence as possible on their defensive capabilities." Kane's expression hardened. "I want to know everything about their military structure, their technology, and their weaknesses before we launch a full-scale assault." As the communication ended, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important about these humans. They had responded to the Empire's ultimatum, not with fear or diplomatic placation, but with a challenge. It was as if they had been waiting for this confrontation, perhaps even looking forward to it. The thought was disturbing. In her experience, species that resisted the Empire did so out of fear, pride, or a misguided belief in their own superiority. But the humans' response suggested something else entirely, a desire to test themselves against a powerful adversary. Over the next week, Lyra directed a series of reconnaissance missions, carefully observing Earth's defenses while maintaining a distance that should have kept her ship safe from human detection. But time and again, Earth fighters would appear with little warning, engaging the Imperial scouts in brief, intense skirmishes before withdrawing. Each encounter revealed more about human tactics and technology, but also raised more questions. Their fighters used modular designs that could reconfigure mid-battle, adapting to Imperial tactics with surprising speed. Their energy weapons, while not as powerful as the Empire's, were more precise and seemed specifically calibrated to penetrate Imperial shields. After one particularly challenging engagement, Lyra received a direct communication from Earth, from General Helena Frost herself. The human general appeared on the view screen, her posture ramrod straight, her expression confident. She was a striking woman with silver-white hair cropped short and piercing blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. "Captain Tival," Frost began, surprising Lyra with the use of her name. "I thought it was time we spoke directly. Your reconnaissance efforts are admirable but unnecessary. If you want to know about our defenses, you need only ask." Lyra maintained her composure despite her surprise. "You seem remarkably confident for someone facing the might of the Galactic Empire, General Frost." A smile curved Frost's lips. "And you seem remarkably cautious for someone representing such overwhelming power. We've studied your tactics, Captain. The Empire typically doesn't waste time with extended reconnaissance unless they've encountered something unexpected." The implication was clear. The humans knew they had surprised the Empire with their capabilities, and they were reveling in it. "The Empire offers all species the same choice," Lyra replied evenly. "Peaceful integration or subjugation by force. The outcome is inevitable, regardless of any minor technological surprises you may have presented." Frost's smile widened. "Is that what you call it? A minor technological surprise? Your damaged escorts might disagree." She leaned forward slightly. "We've been watching the Empire for decades. Captain, your expansion patterns, your technology, your tactics, we've studied it all, and we've been preparing." The revelation sent a chill down Lyra's spine. How could humans have been observing the Empire when Earth was well outside Imperial space? As if reading her thoughts, Frost continued. "Space is vast, but information travels. We've had our probes and listening posts scattered throughout neighboring systems for nearly 40 years. We've salvaged Imperial technology from abandoned outposts, intercepted communications, and learned a great deal about how the Empire operates." "Then, you should know resistance is futile," Lyra countered, falling back on Imperial doctrine despite her growing unease. Frost's expression turned serious. "On the contrary, Captain, we know exactly how to resist, and we've been looking forward to the opportunity. Humanity has always thrived when faced with worthy adversaries. You've given us something to unite against, something to test ourselves against." She paused, her gaze unwavering. "The question is, are you worthy of the challenge we present?" Before Lyra could respond, Frost terminated the connection, leaving her staring at a blank screen, her mind reeling from the implications of what she had just learned. The humans hadn't just been preparing for the Empire's arrival. They had been anticipating it with a sort of eager readiness that bordered on excitement. They saw the Empire not as an overwhelming threat, but as a test of their own capabilities. It was an attitude entirely at odds with the fear and awe the Empire was accustomed to inspiring in newly discovered species. And it suggested that the coming conflict might unfold very differently from the quick subjugation Lyra had expected. That evening, she transmitted a full report to Admiral Kane, including the unexpected communication from General Frost and the disturbing revelation that humans had been studying the Empire for decades. Kane's response was swift and decisive. 2 Imperial cruisers were being diverted to the Sol system, along with their escort fleets. The Empire was preparing for war. 3 days later, the reinforcements arrived. The massive Imperial cruisers, each nearly 5 times the size of Lyra's command ship, took up positions at the edge of Earth's solar system. With them came dozens of support vessels and hundreds of fighter craft, forming an armada that would have intimidated any rational species into immediate surrender. Admiral Kane summoned Lyra to the Imperial Mandate for a direct briefing. Standing in his command center, surrounded by tactical displays showing the deployment of the Imperial forces, Kane looked grimmer than Lyra had ever seen him. "The Emperor is displeased with the delays," he informed her without preamble. "He expected Earth to be under Imperial control by now. The humans have proven more challenging than anticipated, Admiral." Lyra replied carefully. Kane's eyes narrowed. "Yes, I've reviewed your reports. Their technological capabilities exceed our intelligence estimates, and their tactical approach is unusual." He gestured to one of the displays, which showed an analysis of the modular fighter design the humans employed. "Our engineers are particularly interested in this modular technology. It allows for mid-battle reconfiguration that we've never seen before." Lyra studied the display with interest. "They adapt quickly, learning from each engagement. And according to General Frost, they've been studying us for decades." "A claim that remains unverified," Kane noted, though his tone suggested he wasn't dismissing the possibility. "Regardless, the time for reconnaissance is over. We will launch a full-scale assault in 2 standard days. Your ship will lead the vanguard, Captain Taval." Lyra nodded, accepting the assignment without hesitation despite her growing reservations. "What are the Emperor's orders regarding civilian targets?" "Standard protocol applies," Kane replied. "Military assets are the primary targets. Civilian infrastructure is to be preserved where possible, as it will serve the Empire once Earth is subjugated." He paused, fixing Lyra with a stern gaze. "But make no mistake, Captain, the Emperor will not tolerate further resistance. If these humans refuse to submit after our initial assault, we are authorized to escalate until they yield." "Understood, Admiral," Lyra said, though a part of her wondered if the humans would yield at all. Their behavior thus far suggested a species that welcomed conflict rather than feared it. As she turned to leave, Kane added one final instruction. "The Empire has declared a state of war in the Sol system. Captain, the full might of Imperial law now stands behind our actions. Remember that when you face these humans in battle." The declaration of a state of war was significant. It meant that the normal constraints on Imperial military actions were lifted. The Empire could now bring its full technological superiority to bear against Earth, without the political considerations that sometimes limited engagements with potential new subjects. Lyra spent the next 2 days preparing her ship and crew for the coming battle. The tactical displays were updated with all available information on Earth's defenses, though Lyra suspected the humans had more surprises in store. Her suspicions were confirmed when, hours before the planned assault, Earth launched a preemptive strike. The alarms blared across the Imperial fleet as thousands of human fighters emerged, not from Earth, but from concealed positions within the asteroid belt that ringed the outer reaches of the solar system. They had been hiding there, waiting for the Imperial reinforcements to arrive, positioning themselves for an ambush that no one had anticipated. "All ships! Defensive formations!" Kane's voice boomed over the fleet-wide communication channel. "Launch fighters and prepare to engage." The space between Earth and the Imperial fleet erupted in chaos as the human fighters streaked toward the larger Imperial vessels. They moved in coordinated swarms, breaking apart and reconfiguring as they approached, making them difficult targets for the Imperial gunners. Aboard the Celestial Dominion, Lyra took direct command of the battle from the bridge. "Focus fire on their approach vectors," she ordered. "Use wide dispersal energy bursts to disrupt their formations before they can reach our cruisers." Her tactical officer implemented the command immediately, and brilliant flashes of energy illuminated space as the Imperial ships fired in unison. The strategy worked partially. Several human fighter squadrons were caught in the barrage, their ships disabled or destroyed, but the majority adapted quickly, changing course and reconfiguring their formations to minimize the impact of the dispersed energy weapons. "They're targeting the Imperial Vanguard," her sensor officer reported, referring to one of the newly arrived cruisers. Lyra watched in growing alarm as hundreds of human fighters swarmed around the massive ship, their energy weapons focusing on specific points along its hull rather than attacking indiscriminately. It was a coordinated assault, designed to overwhelm the cruiser's defenses at critical junctures. "They know exactly where to hit," she realized aloud. "They're targeting the shield generators and weapons emplacements." Before the Imperial fleet could reposition to protect the vulnerable cruiser, a series of explosions rippled along its hull. The Imperial Vanguard's shields flickered and failed, leaving it exposed to the next wave of human attacks. "Admiral Kane," Lyra called over the secure channel. "The humans are using concentrated fire on the Vanguard's weak points. They know our ship designs too well." Kane's response was terse. "Acknowledged. All ships, converge on the Vanguard's position. We cannot lose a cruiser in the opening engagement." But the Imperial fleet's response came too late. The human fighters, having disabled the Vanguard's primary defenses, launched what appeared to be specially designed torpedoes at the cruiser's exposed reactor housing. The resulting explosion tore through the massive ship, sending fragments of Imperial technology spiraling into the void. The destruction of an Imperial cruiser, one of the most powerful vessels in the fleet, sent shockwaves of disbelief through the Imperial ranks. Such ships were rarely lost in battle, and never so quickly or efficiently. As the human fighters regrouped for another assault, Lyra made a split-second decision that went against standard Imperial doctrine. "All ships under my command, disengage from formation and execute scattered retreat pattern Theta," she ordered. "Draw the human fighters away from the main fleet and into isolated engagements." It was a risky maneuver. Imperial tactics typically emphasized concentrated firepower rather than dispersed engagements. But Lyra had observed the humans' effectiveness against larger targets and suspected they might be less prepared for a series of smaller, unpredictable skirmishes. Her gamble paid off. As her ships broke formation and scattered in seemingly random patterns, the human fighters struggled to maintain their coordinated swarm tactics. Many pursued the Imperial vessels, breaking into smaller groups that were more vulnerable to counterattack. "Now," Lyra commanded as the human formations fractured. "All ships, target isolated fighter groups and engage." The tide of battle began to shift as the Imperial ships turned the tables on their pursuers, using their superior individual firepower to devastating effect against the smaller human squadrons. For every Imperial escort lost, a dozen human fighters were destroyed or disabled. But just as Lyra began to believe they might salvage the situation, the humans unveiled another surprise. The disabled human fighters, which the Empire had dismissed as combat losses, suddenly reactivated. They reconfigured into new formations, combining with intact fighters to form larger, more powerful composite vessels that the Imperial tactical systems struggled to track and target. "What in the Emperor's name are they doing?" Lyra's first officer exclaimed, staring at the tactical display in confusion. Lyra watched in a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration as the composite human vessels renewed their assault on the Imperial fleet. These larger configurations packed more firepower than individual fighters, but maintained much of their maneuverability, presenting a threat the Empire had never encountered before. They're not just reconfiguring their ships, she realized. They're adapting their entire battle strategy on the fly. The engagement continued for hours, with neither side gaining a decisive advantage. The Empire's technological superiority and firepower were offset by the humans' unprecedented adaptability and their intimate knowledge of Imperial weaknesses. For every tactical adjustment the Imperial fleet made, the humans seemed to have a counter-strategy ready. As the battle reached a stalemate, with both sides having suffered significant losses, Lyra received an unexpected communication, not from Admiral Kane, but from the Imperial Mandate's chief science officer, Dr. Kamara. "Captain Taval," the scientist began, her voice urgent. "I've been analyzing the human weapons and tactics. There's something you need to know immediately." "I'm rather busy at the moment, Doctor," Lyra replied tersely, her attention divided between the tactical displays and the ongoing battle outside her viewports. "This cannot wait," Kamara insisted. "The humans aren't just using salvaged Imperial technology. They've improved upon it. The energy signatures from their weapons show modifications that our own engineers haven't implemented yet. They've taken our designs and made them more efficient, more precise." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. How is that possible? Even if they recovered Imperial technology, they shouldn't have been able to understand it well enough to improve it, let alone implement those improvements on a large scale. "That's just it, Captain," Kamara replied, her voice a mixture of concern and scientific fascination. "Their analytical capabilities appear to exceed our estimates by an order of magnitude. They haven't just copied our technology. They've understood the underlying principles and evolved them." The implications were staggering. The Empire's technological superiority was one of its greatest advantages in subjugating new worlds. If humans could not only match, but improve upon Imperial technology in such a short time, they represented a fundamentally different kind of threat than any the Empire had faced before. Before Lyra could fully process this revelation, Admiral Kane's voice cut across all channels. "All Imperial vessels, disengage and regroup at coordinates Alpha 79. I repeat, disengage immediately." The order to retreat was unprecedented in Lyra's experience. The Empire did not retreat. It overwhelmed. It conquered. It subjugated. Yet, here was Admiral Kane, one of the Emperor's most trusted military leaders, ordering a withdrawal in the face of human resistance. As the Imperial fleet disengaged, pulling back to the designated coordinates at the edge of the solar system, Lyra's mind raced with questions and doubts. The unshakable certainty she had always felt in the Empire's inevitable victory had been deeply shaken by the day's events. For the first time in her career, she found herself questioning the fundamental principles that had guided her service to the Empire. If these humans could challenge Imperial might so effectively, what did that say about the Empire's claim to be the uncontested ruler of the universe? It was a dangerous line of thought, one that bordered on sedition. But as she watched the remnants of the Imperial vanguard drift lifelessly through space, Lyra couldn't help but wonder if the Empire had finally met its match. The Imperial fleet regrouped at the designated coordinates, nursing their wounds and assessing the damage from the unexpected battle. The destruction of the Imperial vanguard a cruiser-class vessel that had participated in dozens of successful conquest campaigns, had sent shockwaves through the Imperial ranks. Such ships were considered nearly invulnerable to anything but the most advanced weapon systems. Yet the humans had disabled and destroyed it with tactical precision that bordered on the surgical. Admiral Kane called an emergency meeting of all ship captains aboard the Imperial Mandate. The atmosphere in the command center was tense, the usual confidence of the Imperial officers replaced by a wary uncertainty that none would openly acknowledge. Our initial engagement with Earth's defense forces has yielded unexpected results, Kane began, his voice carefully controlled. The humans possess technology and tactical capabilities that far exceed our intelligence estimates. No one spoke. To admit surprise was to admit failure in predicting the enemy's capabilities, a serious lapse in Imperial military doctrine. Captain Taval, Kane continued, turning his attention to Lyra. Your unconventional tactics during the engagement saved many Imperial lives and vessels. Explain your reasoning. Lyra stood straight, aware that all eyes were on her. The humans demonstrated exceptional coordination when targeting larger vessels. Breaking our forces into smaller, more mobile units disrupted their swarm tactics and forced them to divide their attention. A deviation from standard Imperial doctrine, one of the other captains noted, a hint of disapproval in his tone. One that proved effective against an enemy that had clearly studied our standard doctrine, Lyra countered, meeting his gaze steadily. Kane nodded thoughtfully. Adaptability may be necessary in this campaign. The humans have shown they understand our tactics all too well. He turned to address the entire gathering. Dr. Kimara has analyzed the data from the engagement and has some concerning findings to share. The chief science officer stepped forward, her slender frame seeming almost fragile next to the military officers, though her intellect was renowned throughout the fleet. The human weapons technology is based on Imperial designs, she began without preamble. But they've made significant improvements in efficiency and precision. Their modular ship design allows for mid-battle reconfiguration that our systems struggle to track effectively. How could they have acquired Imperial technology? One of the captains demanded. Earth is well outside our territorial boundaries. According to their General Frost, they've been monitoring our expansion for decades, Lyra supplied. Intercepting communications, salvaging technology from abandoned outposts. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the gathering. The idea that a species confined to their own solar system could have been covertly observing the Empire for so long was difficult to accept. Regardless of how they acquired our technology, Kane interjected firmly. The fact remains that they've not only understood it, but improved upon it. This represents a significant threat, one the Emperor must be informed of immediately. He turned to a tactical display showing the human fleet, which had withdrawn to defensive positions around Earth after the Imperial retreat. We will maintain our position and await further instructions from the Imperial Corps. In the meantime, all ships are to conduct comprehensive diagnostics and repairs. We must be prepared for the next engagement. As the meeting dispersed, Kane gestured for Lyra to remain behind. When they were alone, his stern demeanor softened slightly. Your actions today saved many Imperial lives, Captain, he said quietly, including, possibly my own. Lyra acknowledged the rare compliment with a slight nod. I acted as the situation required, Admiral. Indeed. Kane studied her for a moment, as if weighing a decision. I'm establishing direct communication with General Frost. The Emperor has authorized me to explore diplomatic options. Lyra couldn't hide her surprise. The Empire rarely negotiated with species that had actively resisted Imperial authority, especially those that had inflicted significant losses. The destruction of the Vanguard has forced a reassessment, Kane explained, reading her expression. The humans possess capabilities that could be valuable to the Empire if properly harnessed, and they've demonstrated a willingness to fight that suggests conquering them would be costly. You believe they would consider an alliance? Lyra asked, skeptical. I believe they've gone to extraordinary lengths to prove themselves worthy adversaries, Kane replied. And in my experience, species that can challenge the Empire often make its most valuable subjects, or allies. He paused, his expression thoughtful. I want you to be present for the communication. General Frost seems to respect you, and that may be useful in the negotiations. An hour later, Lyra stood beside Admiral Kane as the communication system established a connection with Earth. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the now familiar face of General Helena Frost, her expression composed and confident despite the recent battle. Admiral Kane, Frost acknowledged with a slight nod. I've been expecting your call. General Frost, Kane replied evenly. The recent engagement has demonstrated that continued conflict would be costly for both sides. A hint of a smile crossed Frost's lips. Indeed, though I suspect more costly for the Empire. The Vanguard was a significant loss. Kane's expression remained impassive, though Lyra could sense his tension. The Empire's resources are vast, General. We could continue this conflict indefinitely. However, the Emperor prefers efficiency to protracted warfare. How considerate, Frost remarked dryly. And what does the Emperor propose instead? A cessation of hostilities, Kane stated, followed by diplomatic negotiations to establish Earth's status within the Imperial sphere. Frost's eyebrows rose slightly. You still expect us to submit to Imperial authority? I expect a mutually beneficial arrangement, Kane corrected smoothly. The Empire has much to offer Earth. Access to thousands of worlds, advanced technology, protection from other interstellar threats. And in return? Frost asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. In return, Earth would acknowledge the Emperor's sovereignty and contribute to the Empire's continued prosperity and security. Kane paused, adding, Your military capabilities and technological innovations would be particularly valuable contributions. Frost seemed to consider this for a moment, her gaze shifting briefly to Lyra before returning to Kane. We've spent decades preparing to resist the Empire, Admiral, not to join it. Yet you've dedicated considerable resources to understanding and improving Imperial technology, Kane noted. That suggests an interest in more than mere resistance. A flicker of something, respect, perhaps, showed in Frost's eyes. We've always believed in learning from potential adversaries. It served humanity well throughout our history. Then perhaps it's time to consider learning as allies, rather than enemies, Kane suggested. Frost's expression turned thoughtful. An interesting proposition, Admiral. But any agreement would need to guarantee Earth's autonomy in certain matters. We won't simply become another subjugated world in your empire. Special status could be arranged, Kane conceded. Given Earth's unique capabilities and the unusual circumstances of our first contact. Lyra watched the exchange with growing fascination. This was not how Imperial diplomacy typically unfolded. Usually, the terms were simple: submit or be conquered. But these humans had earned something few species ever did: the Empire's genuine respect. I propose a temporary ceasefire, Frost said after a moment of consideration, during which we can discuss terms in more detail. As a gesture of good faith, we'll share information about our modular ship technology. And as a reciprocal gesture, Kane replied, the Empire will provide technical specifications for our long-range interstellar communication systems. The negotiation continued for another hour, with both sides carefully establishing the parameters of the ceasefire and the framework for future discussions. Throughout the exchange, Lyra noticed something surprising: a growing sense of mutual respect between Kane and Frost, two military leaders who recognized in each other a worthy counterpart. As the communication concluded, with an agreement to meet in person at a neutral location in Earth's orbit, Lyra found herself reevaluating everything she thought she knew about the Empire's relationship with other species. These humans hadn't submitted to imperial might. They had forced the Empire to recognize them as equals through sheer determination and ingenuity. It was unprecedented in her experience, and it made her wonder what other assumptions about the Empire's place in the universe might be open to question. The following day, as preparations for the diplomatic meeting were underway, Lyra received a private communication from General Frost. Curious about what the human leader might want to discuss without Admiral Kane present, she accepted the transmission in her personal quarters. "Captain Taval," Frost greeted her, the now familiar confidence evident in her bearing. "I wanted to speak with you directly before tomorrow's meeting." "General Frost," Lyra acknowledged, maintaining the formal tone that protocol demanded. "What can I do for you?" "You can tell me what you really think about this situation," Frost replied bluntly. "Not the official Imperial position, but your personal assessment." Lyra hesitated, wary of the unexpected question. "My thoughts align with Imperial policy, General. The ceasefire and negotiations are the most efficient path forward." Frost's expression suggested she wasn't convinced. "During the battle, you broke with standard Imperial tactics, a decision that saved many of your ships. That suggests you're capable of thinking beyond Imperial doctrine when necessary." The observation was uncomfortably perceptive. Lyra had indeed deviated from established protocols, acting on instinct rather than training in the heat of battle. "The Empire values results, General," she said carefully. "Sometimes achieving those results requires flexibility." "Flexibility," Frost repeated with a small smile. "An interesting choice of words for an Imperial officer." She leaned forward slightly. "Let me be direct, Captain. Tomorrow's negotiations will determine whether our species fight a protracted war or forge a new kind of relationship. I'd like to know if you believe the latter is truly possible." The question struck at the heart of the doubts that had been growing in Lyra's mind since the battle. Did she believe the Empire could form a genuine alliance with a species that had so openly defied it? The orthodox answer was clear, but the truth was more complex. "I believe," she said slowly, choosing her words with care, "that both our civilizations have demonstrated qualities worthy of respect. The Empire brings order and advancement to thousands of worlds. Earth has shown remarkable adaptability and determination." "Diplomatic answer," Frost noted, though without criticism. "But you didn't directly address my question." Lyra met the general's gaze steadily. "In my 23 years of service, I have never seen the Empire treat a non-imperial species as a potential equal. Until now. That suggests something unprecedented is possible, if both sides are willing to reconsider long-held assumptions." It was as close to a personal opinion as she dared express, even in a private communication. To go further would border on sedition, questioning the Empire's fundamental approach to other species. Frost seemed to understand the significance of what Lyra had said, and what she had left unsaid. "Thank you for your honesty, Captain. I believe we may have more in common than either of us initially thought." Before Lyra could respond, Frost continued, "There's something else you should know before tomorrow's meeting. Something that may help you understand why we responded to your Empire the way we did." "I'm listening," Lyra said, her curiosity piqued. "Humanity has a long history of conflict," Frost explained. "Thousands of years of wars, rivalries, and competition between nations. It's shaped our development in ways you might find difficult to understand. The Empire's history is also filled with conflict," Lyra pointed out. "Yes, but primarily against external threats. Other species, other civilizations," Frost countered. "For most of our history, we fought ourselves, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. It wasn't until the last century that we achieved anything resembling global unity. And you believe this makes humans different from other species the Empire has encountered?" Lyra asked, not entirely seeing the relevance. I believe it made us uniquely prepared for your arrival, Frost clarified. When we first detected Imperial activities in neighboring systems, humanity was still divided, still fighting internal battles over resources and influence. But the possibility of an external threat, a powerful interstellar empire, gave us something we'd never had before, a common purpose. Understanding began to dawn on Lyra. You're saying the Empire's very existence united your species? Frost nodded. For the first time in our history, all of humanity worked toward a single goal, preparing for potential contact with, or conflict with, the Empire. We pooled our resources, shared our technologies, set aside ancient rivalries, and in the process, we advanced more rapidly than we ever had before. It was a startling revelation. While the Empire viewed itself as a civilizing force, bringing order and advancement to primitive worlds, these humans had used the mere prospect of Imperial contact as a catalyst for their own advancement and unification. So when we finally arrived, Lyra began, we weren't afraid. Frost completed the thought. We were ready, eager, even. The Empire represented the ultimate test of everything we'd built together. She smiled slightly. In a strange way, Captain, your empire may be the best thing that ever happened to humanity. The conversation left Lyra with much to consider as she prepared for the diplomatic meeting. The human's perspective challenged everything she had been taught about the Empire's role in the universe. They didn't see the Empire as a superior force bringing civilization to the primitive. They saw it as a worthy adversary that had inadvertently helped them overcome their own divisions. It was a humbling realization, and one that would shape her approach to the negotiations in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend. The diplomatic meeting took place aboard a specially prepared station in Earth's orbit, neutral ground that both sides could access without compromising their security. The station's central chamber had been arranged with a circular table, symbolizing the equal footing of the negotiations, despite the vast technological and territorial disparities between the two civilizations. Admiral Kane led the Imperial delegation, with Lyra and Dr. Kamara among the select officers chosen to participate. General Frost headed the human contingent, accompanied by several military and scientific advisors, including Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Vale, the commander of the Special Forces Squadron that had led the attack on the Imperial Vanguard. As the two delegations took their seats, Lyra studied the humans with renewed interest. They showed none of the awe or intimidation that representatives of newly contacted species typically displayed when face-to-face with Imperial officers. Instead, they carried themselves with quiet confidence, meeting the Imperial delegates' gazes as equals. Welcome aboard Neutral Station 1, Frost began, opening the proceedings with a formal greeting. Today marks a historic moment for both our civilizations, the first official diplomatic exchange between Earth and the Galactic Empire. Indeed, Kane acknowledged, his manner equally formal. The Emperor has authorized me to negotiate terms that will establish a framework for future relations between our peoples. The negotiations that followed were unlike any Lyra had witnessed in her Imperial career. Rather than dictating terms as the Empire typically did, Kane engaged in genuine give and take, responding to human proposals with counteroffers that respected their concerns while advancing Imperial interests. The humans, for their part, demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of interstellar diplomacy that belied their limited experience beyond their own solar system. They were firm on issues of autonomy and self-governance, but flexible on matters of trade, cultural exchange, and joint military exercises. As the discussions progressed, Dr. Kamara presented a detailed analysis of the human modular ship technology, which had proven so effective in the recent battle. The adaptability of these designs represents a significant innovation, she noted, with undisguised admiration. The ability to reconfigure vessels mid-battle provides tactical advantages that our fixed configuration ships cannot match. Lieutenant Colonel Vale, a lean, intense man with dark eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw, responded with equal technical precision. We developed the modular system specifically to counter the overwhelming firepower advantage of Imperial vessels, he explained. When you can't match raw power, you need to create unpredictability, a principle that has served humanity well throughout its history. I gather, Lyra observed, recalling her conversation with Frost. Vale's eyes flickered to her with newfound interest. Exactly, Captain. Adaptation has always been humanity's greatest strength. The exchange of technical information continued, with both sides sharing knowledge that would have been unthinkable just days earlier. The humans revealed the secrets of their energy weapon modifications, which had allowed them to penetrate Imperial shields with greater efficiency. In return, Dr. Kimara provided insights into Imperial propulsion systems that would enable human ships to achieve faster-than-light travel beyond their current capabilities. As the technical discussions concluded, Admiral Kane addressed the central question that had brought them together. The Emperor is prepared to recognize Earth's special status within the Imperial sphere, he announced. Not as a conquered world, but as an affiliated power with substantial autonomy. And the precise nature of this affiliation? Frost inquired, her tone carefully neutral. A military and scientific alliance, Kane specified. Earth would maintain internal sovereignty, while coordinating with the Empire on matters of interstellar security and exploration. Your technological innovations would be shared with Imperial research divisions, and in return, you would gain access to the Empire's vast knowledge base and resources. And our obligation to the Emperor? Frost pressed. Formal acknowledgement of his position as the preeminent authority in the galaxy, Kane replied. And a commitment to support Imperial interests in situations where they align with Earth's own security concerns. The human delegation conferred briefly before Frost responded. We are prepared to accept these terms in principle, with the understanding that specific details will be codified in a formal treaty, the Sol Accord, named for the system where our civilizations first encountered each other. Kane nodded in agreement. The Empire accepts this framework. The Sol Accord will mark the beginning of a new chapter in Imperial relations with non-Imperial species. As the meeting adjourned for the day, with technical teams from both sides tasked with drafting the specific provisions of the Accord, Lyra found herself reflecting on the unprecedented nature of what had just transpired. Never in Imperial history had a newly contacted species been granted such favorable terms without first being conquered and thoroughly subjugated. Later, as she prepared to return to the Celestial Dominion, she was approached by Lieutenant Colonel Vale, who had evidently sought her out specifically. Captain Taval, he greeted her with a crisp nod. A moment of your time, if I may. Of course, Lieutenant Colonel, she replied, curious about what the human officer might want to discuss. I wanted to compliment your tactical decision during our engagement, he said, surprising her with his directness. Breaking your fleet into smaller, more mobile units was unexpected. It forced us to adapt our strategy mid-battle. High praise, coming from the officer who orchestrated the destruction of an Imperial cruiser. Lyra noted, unable to keep a hint of dry humor from her voice. Vale's expression remained serious. The Vanguard was a legitimate military target, and its destruction served a strategic purpose beyond the immediate tactical advantage. Oh, Lyra raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the implication. We needed to demonstrate that humanity could inflict significant costs on the Empire. Vale explained frankly. Not just to resist conquest, but to establish ourselves as worthy of respect. It was a calculated approach that Lyra found both disturbing and impressive. You deliberately targeted one of our most powerful vessels as a statement? As a necessary first step toward meaningful dialogue, Vale corrected. The Empire respects strength. We needed to speak a language you would understand. The assessment was uncomfortably accurate. The Empire did indeed respect strength above almost all other qualities, and the destruction of the Vanguard had forced a reassessment of humanity's status in a way that mere resistance could not have achieved. Your strategy was effective, Lyra acknowledged, if costly for both sides. War often is, Vale replied simply. But the cost has purchased something valuable, the opportunity for our civilizations to learn from each other rather than destroy each other. As Vale took his leave, Lyra was struck by the paradoxical nature of their interaction. Here was a human officer who had orchestrated a devastating attack on Imperial forces, yet now spoke of learning and cooperation with genuine conviction. It reflected the complexity of humanity that she was only beginning to understand, their capacity for both fierce combat and thoughtful diplomacy, often in service of the same ultimate goals. The drafting of the Sol Accord proceeded with remarkable efficiency over the following days. Both sides seemed eager to formalize their new relationship, recognizing the potential benefits of cooperation over conflict. The final document was more comprehensive than any imperial treaty with a non-imperial species, covering everything from military coordination to scientific exchange to trade protocols. On the day of the signing ceremony, representatives from both civilizations gathered aboard the neutral station. The atmosphere was solemn yet hopeful, with both delegations understanding the historic significance of the moment. Admiral Kane and General Frost stood at the center of the chamber, the Sol Accord displayed between them on a ceremonial table. As they prepared to sign the document that would formally end hostilities and begin a new era of cooperation, Frost addressed the gathered officials. Throughout human history, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, we have often found our greatest advancements emerge from our greatest challenges. The prospect of encountering the Galactic Empire united our world in unprecedented ways and pushed us to achievements that might have taken centuries under different circumstances. She looked directly at Admiral Kane. We prepared for war, but we hoped for something more. Today, that hope is realized, not in conquest or submission, but in mutual respect and shared purpose. Kane nodded, his own expression reflecting a similar sentiment. The Empire has brought thousands of worlds into its fold throughout its long history, but rarely has it encountered a civilization so worthy of recognition as an equal. The Sol Accord represents not just a diplomatic agreement, but an acknowledgement of humanity's unique qualities and the value they bring to the greater galactic community. With these words spoken, they signed the document in turn, followed by the senior members of both delegations. As Lyra added her signature after Dr. Kamara, she felt a profound sense of witnessing a turning point, not just for Earth and the Empire, but potentially for the Empire's approach to all future encounters with advanced civilizations. The ceremony concluded with an exchange of ceremonial gifts, Earth presenting a data crystal containing the complete design specifications for their modular ship technology, and the Empire offering a star chart of systems beyond Earth's previous observation range, including several with habitable worlds that might one day host human colonies. As the formal proceedings ended and the delegations mingled more casually, Lyra found herself approached by both General Frost and Admiral Kane. Captain Taval. Kane addressed her with unusual warmth. The Emperor has reviewed my reports on recent events with great interest. He was particularly impressed by your adaptability during the engagement with Earth's forces. I merely did my duty, Admiral, Lyra replied modestly. You did more than that, Frost interjected. You recognized when standard Imperial tactics were ineffective and had the courage to try something different. That kind of thinking will be valuable in the challenges that lie ahead. Challenges? Lyra inquired, sensing there was more to the comment than general observation. Kane and Frost exchanged a meaningful glance before Kane spoke. There is a matter we haven't discussed publicly yet, a threat that both our civilizations have detected at the edges of explored space. The Void Destruction Network, Frost supplied, her voice lowering slightly. An ancient entity, or collective that has been systematically eliminating all advanced life forms it encounters in the distant reaches of the galaxy. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. She had heard rumors of something unusual being detected in the far outer regions, but nothing concrete had reached the regular command channels. The Empire's deep space probes have recorded the destruction of several developing civilizations in the past decade, Kane explained, and Earth's long-range observation posts have documented similar phenomena from different angles. We believe we're detecting the advance guard of something far more dangerous than either of us has faced before. The Sol Accord isn't just about resolving the conflict between our civilizations, Frost added. It's about preparing for a greater threat that neither of us could effectively face alone. The revelation put everything in a new perspective for Lyra. The unprecedented nature of the treaty, the emphasis on technological exchange, the focus on military coordination. This wasn't merely diplomatic expediency. It was strategic necessity. The Emperor has authorized the formation of a joint task force, Kane continued. A combined fleet drawing on the strengths of both our military traditions. And he has requested that you, Captain Taval, serve as one of its commanders, alongside Lieutenant Colonel Vale. The assignment was unexpected, but not unwelcome. Lyra had gained a genuine respect for humanity's capabilities and approach to warfare, and the prospect of working alongside them against a common threat was intriguing. "I would be honored to serve in this capacity, Admiral," she replied with conviction. "Excellent," Kane nodded with satisfaction. "The joint fleet will begin formation immediately, with both human and Imperial vessels adapting to incorporate the best technologies and tactics from both traditions. We're calling it the Sacred Talon Fleet," Frost added with a hint of pride. "A name that honors both our culture's ancient traditions of noble warriors defending their people." As the conversation concluded, and Lyra returned to the Celestial Dominion to begin preparations for her new assignment, she found herself reflecting on the extraordinary turn of events that had brought her to this point. What had begun as a standard exploration and conquest mission had transformed into something unprecedented. A genuine alliance between the Empire and a species that had dared to challenge it as an equal. The experience had changed her, forcing her to question assumptions about the Empire's role in the universe that she had held unexamined for most of her career. The humans had shown that resistance to the Empire could be more than feudal defiance. It could be the beginning of a dialogue between equals, each with something valuable to offer the other. 2 years later, Captain Lyra Taval stood on the bridge of the Sacred Talon, the flagship of the joint human-imperial fleet. The massive vessel represented the culmination of the technological and tactical exchange between the two civilizations, an Imperial cruiser chassis augmented with human modular systems, capable of reconfiguring key components mid-battle to adapt to changing circumstances. Beside her stood Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Vale, now promoted to full colonel and serving as her co-commander. Their initial wariness had given way to mutual respect and even friendship as they worked together to prepare the fleet for its mission to the distant reaches of space, where the Void Destruction Network had been detected. "All ships report ready, Captain," Vale informed her, his formal tone belied by the gleam of anticipation in his eyes. Lyra nodded, surveying the tactical display that showed the 100 vessels of the Sacred Talon Fleet in perfect formation. Imperial cruisers and destroyers alongside human carriers and modular fighter squadrons, representing the largest combined force either civilization had ever fielded. "Signal Admiral Kane and General Frost," she ordered. "The Sacred Talon Fleet stands ready to depart." As the confirmation came through, and the fleet prepared to enter faster than light travel toward their destination, Lyra took a moment to appreciate the journey that had brought her here. What had begun as a mission of conquest had become something far more significant, a partnership between civilizations that had recognized in each other not just worthy adversaries, but valuable allies. Thinking about how far we've come? Vale asked quietly, seeming to read her thoughts. 2 years ago, we were trying to destroy each other, Lyra replied, with a hint of wonder in her voice. Now, we're about to face the greatest challenge in either of our histories. Together. Vale nodded, his expression solemn yet determined. As the ancient human saying goes, iron sharpens iron. Our conflict made both our civilizations stronger, and now that strength will be tested against something far more dangerous than either of us could have imagined. As the fleet engaged its drives and leapt into the faster-than-light corridor that would carry them to the distant battleground, Lyra's thoughts turned to the future that awaited them. Among the vast sea of stars, humanity and the Galactic Empire now shared a common ideal: to face the ultimate challenge, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals united in purpose and resolve. Whatever awaited them in the darkness beyond, they would face it together. Two civilizations that had learned the most valuable lesson of all: that true strength came not from domination, but from the forge of worthy challenge and mutual respect.